Dating is about having a good time as you collect data. It does not mean sleeping with people. It does not mean, getting booed up with people immediately and saying we go together. It is literally going out for coffee, conversation, a nice date.
Yes.
I went on balloon rides. I went on helicopter rides. I ended up doing all kind of cool things that I wouldn't have done, otherwise, because I was willing to allow myself. And that's the first thing. It was like, give myself permission to be clear about what I desire, but then also to date and know that dating did not mean the first person I met, I wanted to marry. I've already been married and I need time before I do that again.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Paula Ferris Show. I am your host, Paula, and I am so glad that you're here. And if you had a chance to listen to January's Hot Topics, my husband, John, was my co-host all month. I guess I'm flying solo this month, but John and I had a chance in January to talk about some of our hottest topics in our community, whether it be menopause or politics or college or teenagers. If you haven't listened, I encourage you to go back and listen to those. But something that so many of you want me to talk about is relationships and dating. In fact, in my personal newsletter, if you're not signed up for it, make sure you check it out at paulaferrisofficial.com. And I take you behind the scenes with this podcast. I give you an inside look, an authentic look into my life as a working mom of 3 kids. We have fun giveaways, but exclusive content. And if something's coming up on the podcast, you're going to hear about it first in my newsletter. Make sure you're signed up at paulaferrisofficial.com. And I took a poll in my newsletter a couple of months ago. I threw out a couple of topics and I said, what do you want me to talk about? And the number one thing you wanted me to talk about was relationships and dating. So here we are. I'm launching a series on relationships and dating, and I can't wait to tell you about the lineup. The topics are dating after divorce, getting back with your ex, single in your 40s and what our single friends want us to know. We also have navigating your teens dating, as well as how to keep it spicy with your partner. And of course, John's going to join me for that episode, but can't wait to bring you all 5 of those episodes. And we're going to kick it off this week with dating after divorce. Now, a listener, her name is Tracy W., reached out to me and she said, will you please do an episode on dating after divorce? She was with her ex for over 20 years and she doesn't know where to start. And did you know that approximately 40% of our population is single right now, whether that be divorced or they're widowed or they've never been married? 40%. That's 4 in 10, 2 in 5 people. So I've invited a new friend to the show to talk about dating after divorce. Her name is Patrice Washington. You may actually know her already because she has a really large platform as a financial expert. She also has a podcast, the Redefining Wealth podcast. But Patrice found herself single after a 20-year relationship, not knowing where to start. And that's what she had to figure out. She's also a single mom, so she's navigating the whole blending families aspect of it as well. And there's a twist because her teen daughter is also entering the dating scene the same time Patrice was. And look, even if you don't find yourself single, look, I'm married. I'm going to be married 25 years this year. But I have a lot of friends who are single, whether that be they've been widowed or they are divorced or they've never been married. I want to know what it's like for my friends. So I encourage you to listen so you can empathize. And also maybe you can share this with some of your single friends. But without further ado, here is Patrice Washington on dating after divorce with a twist. And make sure you stick around for my takeaways after the conversation and also a teaser as to what's coming up next week on the podcast. Here's Patrice. Patrice, it's lovely to meet you.
Oh, it's so good to be here, Paula. And this is honestly one of my favorite things to talk about privately, like with my girlfriends and with my private clients. So I'm really excited to just share more of what I've learned, like publicly.
I was going to say, this is going to be a public conversation. You're okay with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you are a financial expert, but you had to become a novice again when it came to dating. You are divorced. You were with the same guy for, I think, over 20 years, married 15 years. You met him when you were 21. What have you learned? What's it like dating after divorce while also navigating a teenage daughter who's dating?
Okay, so here's the drill.
Yeah.
I was married for 15 years, but with the same person for almost 20 years, which
Wow.
means that
Mhm.
I never really dated with any type of intention. When you are dating in
Mm.
your 20s, you're just having fun. I was just
Mhm.
in college living footloose and fancy free. I did not
Yeah,
plan on
yeah.
becoming someone's wife, right? But as
Mhm.
fate would have it, that's what happened. And we built a beautiful life together, had a beautiful child together who is now 17 years old. But when I woke up at 40 years old and it set in, this was the question that came to me. If I wanted to be all that I truly felt I was being called to be in the world, what would I be
Mhm.
willing to lose? And the reality was, I had not been fully honest about the fact that I didn't fully feel aligned in my marriage and like it was something that
Mhm.
was honoring and respecting all of who I am, not just what
Right.
people applaud me for publicly. So when I did decide to divorce and move forward, it was so important to me that every step I take, Paula, in this season of my life be 1000% authentic and true to who I
Mhm.
really am, not who I have created
Mhm.
for public consumption. So that was the very first thing is like,
Sure.
who are you really? What do you genuinely desire? And what do you see for yourself? My podcast is redefining wealth, but in that season, I was like, I want to redefine love. What does love look like?
Yes, for
What
sure.
does it
Yeah.
feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like from every level? Now, this is the
Yes.
thing though. I was 40, turning 41, and my daughter was turning 14 all at the same time.
Wow.
And that was
Lots
the
of
other
change.
thing. Lots of change, but that was the
Yeah.
other thing that made me say, she's watching. She's looking at
Mhm.
my example, and I have an opportunity to do this with as much intention as possible so that she can see, know, and believe what's possible for her. And
Oh,
we
wow.
just have a really
That's
great
but
relationship.
that's also an extra layer of pressure as you're navigating the unknown for you.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of unknown, pieces and a lot of uncertainty, but it was also I was like
Mhm.
at this place in my life where I was willing, as I was telling my girlfriends, to take my chances in the wild. I was like, I know what
Yeah.
this is. I'm willing to take my
Uh-huh.
chances in the wild. And so even one
Yeah.
of the first things I had to do is reframe my mindset because I kept hearing people say, "Oh, there's pee in the dating pool." Have you heard that, Paula? Where people are like, "Oh, there's pee in the
There
dating pool.
what's that
Don't
supposed
get
to mean?
in."
There's pee in every pool. Like, right? I mean, what does that even mean, Patrice?
I just heard it so much from other people who may have
Yeah.
been single the whole
Uh-huh.
time or who were also divorced
Yep.
and they're like, there's pee in the dating pool. And for me, I was like, I can't live my life through the lens of all people act this way. That's never true when you operate from these gross generalizations. I was like, I'm not looking for all the people in the pool. I'm just looking for one person.
Mhm.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yep.
looking for everyone. And so it was so good though, because my daughter was going into ninth grade as well. And she was like, Mom, I'm ready to date. I want to date. I want to figure out what my high school sweetheart is going to be like. And I'm like, okay,
Uh-huh.
cool. Let's do it together. And so one of the first things that I did was personally, I wrote a desire list. What do I genuinely desire in partnership? I want to know what that is before I meet people because I have this practice around creating governing decisions. And those governing decisions are like the standards for your life, or some people will call them boundaries. And I don't necessarily see it as something that you use to keep people out. I'm just very clear
Yes.
about what it takes to come in. Like,
Okay.
what does it take to be in relationship with me? So I wrote my desire list. Do you want to know how many things are on it?
I'm gonna take a guess. 10 things.
Up.
How about 100? Am I too high?
Okay, that's too high. That's too high.
Okay.
But
50.
even that's too high. I'm not knocking it if someone gets to 50. I did about 26 things. There are
Amazing.
26 things and they were not superficial things. They were very much how I see myself in relationship, how I want to be treated. I started with things like kindness and
Mhm.
integrity and humor. And then as I started to date, I got to refine the list because I realized when I started dating that humor could be mean spirited. So I had to go a little bit deeper and say, I want someone who's humorous, but not at the expense of others. And
Oh, that's good.
because I set that desire list, I was very clear that they were not demands, but they were desires. And I think for women over 40, especially, society has a way of looking at us as if we don't have the right to desire anymore. That
Oh,
we have
preach.
to, and I literally heard this from
Yes.
people in the comments. They were like, who are you to say that you want a man over 6 feet tall? I'm like, I'm a 5'10" woman who's 6'2"
Yeah.
when I put heels on, and I have
Yeah.
the right to desire not having to
Yes.
bend over on my pictures. That's what I
Yep.
desire. But it was
Uh-huh.
that detailed because I realized that we live in a space and time where people will want you to dumb down your desires. And living authentically is not about dumbing down what you truly desire.
So you're making this desire list at the same time your daughter's in ninth grade. You're newly divorced. You're back on the scene. She's watching everything that you're doing. So obviously and you can't just tell a teenager, well, I'm an adult and you're not, so I can have a different standard. That's not how they interpret life. How do you navigate this time with her as you're back on the scene and you're trying to figure it out and she's trying to figure it out and it's your first foray into watching your teenage daughter date? Like,
Mhm.
how do you navigate that?
Initially, when it came to something like the desire list, I never shared with her the depth of my list. I would
Mhm,
just tell her when she would tell me about, different kids at school who were approaching her or who asked her on a date, or,
mhm.
we had a young man come to the house and asked me if he could ask her to be his Valentine. And it was like a
That is
whole,
precious, by the way. That
it
is
was so
precious.
sweet. He found me on Instagram, DM'd me, and asked if he could come ask her to be his Valentine. It was the sweetest thing. But
So wait a second. He didn't just DM you and ask you. He's DM'd you to get permission to come to your house and ask you in person?
Mhm. And his mom brought him.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love that.
it was so sweet. But you know what? I also think that he knew what was required because my daughter was already getting clear about her desire,
Mm,
how she wanted to
so
be
good.
treated. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you like me, so now we go together." One of the things that I taught my daughter Reagan was that when I was growing up, we were taught to just wait to be chosen. So
Mhm.
the first person who says, "Oh, I like you and you're cute,"
Mm,
you're like, "Okay, we go together." I don't know if that's what they
yes.
say now, but that's what we used to say. We go together.
Yeah.
And you
Mhm.
just go together until you get married. And before you know it, you may not necessarily be in relationship with someone you even feel aligned or connected to. And that's the reality for a lot of us, that when we were in our teens and 20s, we were choosing partners from uninformed places, from
Yes.
things that we had not quite considered. I never made a desire list when I was 20, 21 years old.
Mhm.
I didn't know how I wanted to be treated in relationship. I didn't have certain things defined about how
Mm.
this would all go. I just ended up in it and did the best I could. And I think that's what a
Yeah.
lot of us learn, and something that I wanted to make sure my daughter didn't have to unlearn. So
Yeah.
I told her, write your desire list, which is, how do you want to be treated in relationship? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And I suggested that she write five things. I think she ended up with about 12. She is her mother's daughter.
The apple didn't fall far from the tree there, did it, Patrice? At the same time, you're keenly aware that she's watching and listening
Hmm.
and tuning into you being back on the dating scene. And we can't tell our daughters, hey, you need to respect your body. You need to make sure that he respects you if you're not also willing to do the same thing. How
Right.
keenly aware were you of that? You can't just tell her one thing and do the exact opposite, right? You have to
Yeah.
actually live those values out.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say is, back to those governing decisions, I was very clear in dating that I would not expose my daughter to anyone that I hadn't had a chance to really vet
I
for
got
at
you.
least
Mhm.
90 days. Let me say this too, to the moms who may be getting back out there in the dating scene. I found that it was really important to date multiple people because I only knew one person my whole adult life, and I
Mhm.
didn't have any comparison. And it was so important to have multiple people so that I could collect data about what was
Yes.
really
Yeah.
happening. You can't collect
Mhm.
data on one person. You
No, you
have to
can't.
have a test pool. And I just want to remind people that dating is about having a good time as you collect data. It does not mean sleeping with people. It does not mean, getting booed up with people immediately and saying we go together. It is literally going out for coffee, conversation, a nice date.
Yes.
I went on balloon rides. I went on helicopter rides. I ended up doing
Hello.
all kind of cool things that I wouldn't have done, otherwise because I was willing to allow myself. And that's the first thing. It was like, give myself permission to be clear about what I desire, but then also to date and know that dating did not mean the first person I met, I wanted to marry. I've
Mhm.
already been married and I need time before I do that again. But it was
Yeah.
about collecting data. And that is something that I've passed on to my daughter because I did notice with her girlfriends, which I am the mom that the girls come and hang out and tell me all the business. So I did notice with her girlfriends that they were meeting little boys or girls in ninth grade and then going, this is going to be my high school sweetheart the whole 4 years. And it's like,
Mhm.
relax, wait a minute. You don't even
Yeah.
really know them yet. You need
Yep.
to get to know them more. You need to make sure that you're not being presented with a representative. You need to
Mm.
make sure that they really are aligned with how you want to be treated and how you want to feel. And you need to be willing to lose what you thought was possible if it doesn't align. You don't want to
Yeah,
be
that's
someone who
good.
romanticizes what you're experiencing. You try to turn it into a fairy tale that doesn't exist.
Right. Did you notice when you got back on the dating scene that there were so many other women and men that were just like you? It's like when you get a car, like let's say I bought a Toyota RAV4, which that's what my daughter drives. It's like the moment we bought one, we just started seeing them everywhere, right? Did you notice the same thing? Like all of a sudden your eyes are open. Oh my gosh, there are so many people in my situation, whether they're in their 30s or 40s, dating after divorce. Did you notice that?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I absolutely noticed that. And I also will say that for my own dating experience, I attracted a lot of men who had been in long term marriages and had already gone
Mhm.
through a lot of the lessons and ups and
I got
downs
you.
and all the things.
Mhm.
So back to that date, there's pee in the dating pool. Yes. Did I meet some duds? Paula, of course I did. Did I meet some toads? Absolutely. No, I did meet some people who were not aligned, but for the most part,
Uh-huh.
I really met great people. And I think it's just because of the energy that you also exude when you believe that there are great people out there for you. I
Mhm.
believed that
Yep,
there were. I didn't go
that's
into it
good.
like, oh, there's no one out there. Everybody's bad. I'm just gonna. No, I went out there like, yeah, I'm here. I'm
Mhm.
clear.
And I like what you did. It wasn't a demand list. It was a desire. And look, we don't always get the desires of our heart, but
Hmm.
just even your posture there was like, this is what I'd really like out of a
Yeah.
relationship. I think just your posture going into it. And like you said, you get back the energy that you put out there and you put out really great energy going into it. How did you find the time? So like busy parents dipping their toes back in the dating waters and they're navigating so much, right? How did you find time? Like where did you start?
That is so good. One thing that I realized as a woman with a very full plate, and I
Mhm.
serve a lot of clients and do a lot of things
Mhm.
as well, is that if dating is what I desired, I was going to have to create the margin in my calendar necessary to do that. And I think it's important to say that because many of us will say that we desire something, but we don't necessarily set our lives up to support what we're saying. We
That's good.
say we desire it, but then nothing else about our life actually changes to support that desire. And at Redefining Wealth, we have these 6 pillars of wealth, and the third one is space. And space is about setting up your life to support you. So, one of the things that I had to do was if I wanted to date with intention, I had to take off all the busy stuff on my calendar that I had just been accustomed
Mhm.
to. I was on autopilot. I'm in all these clubs, but they're clubs with women. I'm in all these groups, but they're with
Right.
women. It's like I need to give myself the margin and the space to at least create the time. And also, I feel for myself, speaking for myself,
Right.
a woman being so busy and frazzled all the time does not really create the energy to invite. And I came from that, always busy. always something to do. Calls at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. You're exhausted by the end of the day. There is no opportunity to really date and show up as your best self. So I would say take inventory of your calendar and your life and maybe some of the things that were great in one season, but they don't necessarily serve this season of dating with intention that you're going into. And everything is
Yes.
not a no, but it could be a not right now. And you can
Mm-hmm.
always add it back in more thoughtfully and strategically later.
You're like our friend that we're coming to for advice. Okay. Let's say that, you have friends who are newly divorced, separated, or maybe they're single. They've never been married. What's maybe the first thing that you would tell them about entering the dating scene when you're a little bit older?
I think the first thing about entering the dating scene is remembering that no one is going to add love to your life that you don't first give yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely went through a whole self-love journey before I started dating. So I
Mm,
separated in 2021, but really before I started dating, maybe it was like 8 months or so where I literally took a dating program. And the program, back to being intentional, I was very intentional because I
wow.
didn't
I'm
have
obsessed.
experience
Yes.
in dating. In that program, what I learned more than anything was that I needed to be so rooted in my self-love that I would be willing to lose any person who came into my life that did not promote that same type of love for me.
Mm,
Meaning, right? Sometimes we get so caught up in the idea of a person that we get stuck to the appearances and not necessarily the peace that they bring.
I
Some
got
people will
you.
bring
Mhm.
chaos into your life. And I'm like, I'm not really going back there. And that's not anything I desire to do. So the first part of all of this, and I will say for many people who may be divorced or separated, they started to grieve that previous relationship well before the physical separation. And
Mhm.
one thing that you're going to have to learn to do is reject advice that is not in alignment for where you are. So what people will try to say is, well, if you were with someone for 20 years, you need to give yourself 5 years to heal. It's like, be for real.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. 5 years?
That's crazy.
It's like,
Yes.
be for real. Many people who are in a physical separation, divorce, whatever, they have been grieving this for some time, which
Mhm.
means they have already been thinking, planning, plotting, dreaming, figuring out who they are, what they want well before that happens. And you can't let people shame you out of those desires or out of your intention for dating because they didn't see you doing that work and that self-love work
Mhm.
that you may have been
Mhm.
starting well before. So
Yes.
that's the first step is knowing, for yourself that you love yourself and adding someone to it is literally an addition. No one can come into my life and complete me. I'm already whole.
Mm.
I'm adding my whole to your
Yes.
wholeness.
Yes. Yes. So John, my husband and I like to joke. I'm like, "You're my better whole," with a W, WHOLE instead of better half, and it always comes out wrong. So, because I get so annoyed with the phrase, "You're my better half." I'm like, "So you're only a half of a person?" Like, I don't think
Mm,
anybody completes you. I think you have to be, like you said, whole and complete on your own. They complement and they bring out the best in you and they balance you, but they're not
yeah.
your better half. And I think so many of us are looking for somebody to fulfill them. And that's just when you put that much hope in man or woman, it's going to lead to disappointment. So I love that you did that. Did you hop on some apps or like how did you start getting back on the scene?
Okay. So let me tell you what this all led to. So I've been doing the self-love work. I was
Yep.
writing my desire list. I did start to date, but I was only dating people that I met like in the airport or,
Mhm.
I sold my primary residence and started dating the moving company, the guy who owned the moving
What were you
company.
you at the airport, the moving guy? I got to
What
give you
can
some
I
credit.
say, Paula? I'm just a vibe, right? I'm
Yes,
like,
you are.
I was like, look at me attracting all these great men. I was having a good time dating. But then I went through the season where when I felt led to release my primary residence, there was just a lot going on. And I was like, I'm going to take a step back. But I happened to be talking to a girlfriend on a Friday evening. Get this. And she goes, have you ever tried a dating app out of the blue? And I'm like, no, no, I meet people in the airport. Who do you think
Uh-huh.
I am?
Yeah.
I honestly, I want to apologize to everyone who's been, using apps and online dating because I was a little snobby about it. I was just like, I don't need to do that. I meet people out and about. I don't need
Uh-huh.
that. She mentions it around 5 o'clock in the evening. And for the first time, something in me just felt released. I'm like, why am I making this such a big deal? And who do I think I am? Like that I'm too good
Mhm.
to try an online dating app? And yeah, why don't I try? It's not, it's the same principles just in a digital format. So
Mhm.
I download the app around 6 something. And the guy that I'm currently with for over a year, I met at 7:30 on that day.
Okay, I need to know, what did you put in your profile? Like, what did you put out there? Because I think that's really important too. I this is a series, I've talked to other people that it's really important that you put your most authentic self out there and make sure your friends are vetting it to make sure it's an accurate representation. You gotta be a little weird so you stand out a little bit. So what did your profile say that you attracted
Okay.
this incredible man?
Okay,
That's
so a couple
awesome.
things. I think it's really important, and I'm just going to give this away because I feel like I'm in a good place right now. So I'm going to give this
Okay.
away because I have a very public platform. I was nervous at the idea of putting myself out there in an online way. So
Absolutely.
I used my name, but I changed the spelling because I was like, well, if I end up connecting with someone, I don't want them calling me Sheila or something, and then they think I'm just a complete liar. So I changed it. I saw, first of all, top to bottom on this profile, I changed my name, the spelling of it. So it was still Patrice, but it read a little differently. And
Mhm.
then I had never taken any courses or looked anything up about what to do on an online profile. This was literally me following my desire list and just
Okay.
being honest and authentic.
All
But I
right.
used the prompts that were there. And so I used some that were very fun and some that were just very direct about what I was looking for. I literally said, I'm here to collect data. I was in a long-term marriage and I'm learning what it looks like to date, in this season of my life. I talked about the importance of my daughter and, what she meant to me. And some of my pictures, I did me in the gym. That's really important to me, the fit pillar. And so I did like a video of me in the gym. I also did a picture of me with no makeup. I did a full body. I did just me made up for work. I did a variation because for me, it's really important. And this was on my desire list that the more someone get to know me, all of me, the more they love me. If I have to hide bits and pieces of who I
Right.
am, you're not my person. So I really tried to lead with
Mm.
the exception of wanting people to know immediately what I do in the world, because that is one piece of
Mhm.
who I am. I led with all the other
Right.
things that were important to me: fun, fitness, family, humor. I think I mentioned something like some causes that I was really passionate about. And I attracted some really great candidates, but it just so happens that the first person I matched with or connected with is the person I'm still with today.
Wow, and how long did it take for you to introduce him to your daughter? Because I know
I
you
gave
said
it
you
the
were
full
real you
90 days.
Yep.
I knew he was such a great guy. I knew that he was a great father to his own children. That was one of my
Mhm.
desires. Um, and my daughter knew he existed, but I would not let them FaceTime or meet in person until the 90 days. I even had on my list that the person could not meet my family, meaning my big brother and my mother, until they had passed 12 months.
Wow.
I'm very protective of the people that I love, and I'm not going to allow people to come in and out of their lives unless they're fully vetted.
Mhm. Yes, I think that's what's difficult for, a lot of men and women in your shoes is, and especially at a time when you're trying to navigate your own daughter dating. Like, our requirement is if there's a boy that is interested in our daughter, he's gotta come to our house, he's gotta knock on our door, he's gotta meet us, talk to us face to face, and you want the same for your daughter, of course. I'm old
Mhm.
school, I don't know about you, but then you're also navigating this and you're like, "Actually, I don't want you to meet them for your own protection, for
Mhm.
90 days." How did you navigate that, having some of those stricter rules for your daughter, when it came to who she was gonna date, coming to the house, being respectful of you and your
Yeah.
authority? mother, but at the same time, you are respectful of this relationship, but you also want to protect your daughter. So how do you
Yeah.
navigate that's got to be difficult.
You know what? It really wasn't that difficult because I think I was just demonstrating for her anyway what it could look like.
Mm,
And before, we got divorced, her dad and I are still very great co-parents. And so he had
that's
already
good.
put in place that if there was anyone who wanted to date her, they would have to meet me first. And if they got past me, then they could potentially get to him. So
Okay, wow.
that was something that we had already talked about because
Mhm.
he really does trust my discernment and my
Mhm.
intuition. And he knows that she would listen to me if I didn't feel like someone just energetically was the right person for her. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also allow her, I don't ever tell her, no, I don't like that person. But she does ask me, what do you think? What did you think? Did you? And I'm radically honest with her. Our relationship is rooted in radical honesty. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's good.
I think that they're nice. However, here's what I would invite you to pay attention to and see how consistent they are in that area over the next
Mhm.
30 days, 60 days.
Mm, mm.
And without me having to say, get rid of that boy, she has come back. She-
Which I'm
She's
sure you're
come
probably
back.
thinking.
I'm
You're
thinking, I'm
probably
always
thinking it.
thinking, I'm always thinking it. And then I take it to my prayer closet and I'm praying like, oh Lord, get rid of that boy. But because she has been groomed to pay
Mm,
attention to what she desires first and foremost, and then to look for consistencies, but also inconsistencies. I'm very
mhm.
big on like, do the actions, actually align with the words that were used? If not, there's a lack of integrity there. And if a part of your
Yes.
desire list is rooted in integrity, then that's something to pay attention to. You can't turn a blind eye. She has come back and I've said, what happened to so and so? Even the boy who came to the house to ask for her,
Uh-huh.
to be Valentine.
Yes.
She ended up sending him a message and saying, I don't think you're bad. I just don't think that we're a good fit for one another. And he sent her a message and said, what do I need to change? And she's like, nothing. You should never want to change for anybody else because I wouldn't change for you. And I was like, good
Wow, she is
Lord.
so mature.
Oh, she really is. She
She is
really is.
so mature. Did you find that it was easier and you said, you made it known you were back out there, you were dating for a bit,
Hmm.
you didn't jump right into another relationship. Was it easier to date people that had kids or those that did? Was that a desire of yours? I know you said you wanted to date someone
Mhm.
that was a good father, but
Yeah.
was being a father kind of a prerequisite? I've heard both sides from friends who are back in the dating pool that some of them wanna date somebody that has never had kids and some of them do, and they say it's easier. What's your thought?
So, what was on my desire list was to date someone who was madly in love with their own children. That was on my list. Someone who's madly
Mhm,
in love and has an amazing relationship with their own children. And then under
mm,
that, I had someone who would love my daughter as their own and she could respect and trust them.
mm,
That was
wow.
what I desired. I did date a few guys who didn't have children. And I think for me, the problem with that was they maybe think because I look younger that I am younger
Uh-huh.
and that I actually desire to do it again. And I'm like, no, my child's in high school. And that
Yeah,
was not the desire of my heart. Starting
mhm,
over did not feel genuine or authentic for me, no matter what my eggs said. I was not
yeah.
interested.
Yeah. What did you find? Were there some misconceptions once you were back in that dating pool again? You buy the Toyota RAV4 and all of a sudden you start seeing all of them out there. Were there any misconceptions once you jump back in the pool? Like, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was like this, or this is what I thought it was going to be, and it's not like that at all. Were there any misconceptions?
I really didn't expect to find
Mhm.
as many quality men as I did, just
Oh,
because of
that's
what I
encouraging.
heard on social media
Yeah.
and what I learned from other people. I really didn't expect to date as
Hmm.
many quality men. I mean, entrepreneurs, corporate guys, pilots, like I attracted on the same apps. I attracted
Yes.
or one app.
Yeah.
I only was on one app. But I attracted the type of people that I would meet in the real world anyway. And so I
Yep.
do really want to go back and say, I think our energy and our mindset, our attitude towards a process will always determine the success and the progress
Right.
we meet.
Everybody's going to kill me if I don't ask you what the app was. What was the app, Patrice? Can you tell us?
I met him on Hinge.
Okay. Hey, love it. I've heard good things about Hinge. So, okay,
I have
let's talk a
too.
and it's going well. Can you tell us a little bit about your new man? You've been together how long now?
So we've been together just over a year and it is going well. He also has two sons. Coincidentally, one is born 2 days after my daughter.
Oh,
And
wow.
we call them the twins, although his son is 6'3" and my daughter is like 5'6". So they're the cutest thing, but they get along so well. It's really been beautiful. My theme for this year was effortless acceleration. And
Mhm.
effortless doesn't mean that you don't do anything, right? But it does mean that the things that you put in place are able to create momentum.
Right.
And there has been so much momentum just in terms of the way the children connected immediately, which is always beautiful to see. We have a running list of family date ideas and they add things that they see on TikTok to the list and then we go try it out all together.
Mhm.
It is just really a beautiful kind of blend. And for me
Yes.
right now, I am experiencing the most kind, generous, integral, patient, supportive love I have ever experienced in my life.
Wow.
And I know the difference now, which is why I said it's important for us, if we've been in long-term relationships with one person, to give ourselves permission to date multiple people. Even if we feel like, oh, I found the one, I
Mhm.
found him and still continue to date other people for another 90 days. I
Wow.
was like, if he makes it to the end of the 90 days, great. If he doesn't,
Mhm.
and he knew that I was dating other people. I knew that
Okay.
he was dating other people. And it just got to the point where he was invited on a date, which I helped him get dressed for on FaceTime. That's how much we had become friends. Like it was just funny at that point.
Wow.
And I helped him get dressed for a
Wow.
date and he ended up at the same restaurant. It was her selection that we went to like 3 days before. And they sat them in the exact same seats in the exact same way. And it
Wow.
was on that date that he called me like within an hour and he's like, hey, essentially, I know what we agreed to. You don't have to change doing anything, but I know that you're my person and I'll give you
Mhm.
the space to continue to figure out what you desire. And
Wow, he
even his
respects
ability
you.
to not pressure me, but to
Mhm.
honor my process
Yep,
was
that's
endearing.
big. You talked about the way it's blending with your daughter and his 2 sons. Why do you think it's been blending so well? What advice would you give to people who, are in the same situation and they might be nervous about jumping back into a relationship? They might be nervous about blending those families. What advice would you give to them?
To give themselves an opportunity to feel it, not force it. Like I feel it every time we walk away from one of our dates and my daughter and I get on our car and they get in their car. She says, oh my gosh, that was so fun. I love them so much. Like I feel it. I feel the connection that he has with my daughter. Like they
Mhm.
share Spotify playlists. She's an old soul. So
Mhm.
she is always recommending music and he's adding music to her playlist and they
Yes.
have their own vibe and their own thing. And then for me and the boys, we have our own language and our own. It is that effortless piece that I talked about where I think doing a lot of the work on myself, because a big thing that I lead my life with now is I am willing to lose anything that does not feel aligned. And
Mhm.
that sounds scary, but the truth is it's the willingness to lose that allows me to show up radically honest.
It's good.
That's the
It's
piece
really
that a
good.
lot of people don't have. Being willing to lose does not mean that you will lose. It doesn't mean that you want to lose, but it does mean that by all means necessary, you are willing to say, hey, this doesn't work, or I don't like this, or this doesn't feel good,
Mhm.
or I don't know about that. Because especially for women, Many of us coming from long-term relationships had learned to self-silence in order to keep the peace and keep things going for a very long time. And so this is an invitation to step into a new version of yourself where you get to have everything that you desire, but you have to be honest about what that is.
Yes, you get to. That's really good. Thank you for sharing your own personal experiences. And I think it's going to help so many people that are navigating the same thing. I have had so many of my listeners and viewers that watch on YouTube, but so many reach out asking about this time because 40% of our population is single, whether they're widowed or divorced or never been married. So I'm really grateful that you were vulnerable today and decided to share this. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This was fun. I'm glad I got a chance to share a little.
So Patrice's podcast is called the Redefining Wealth Podcast. She says she did an entire season about her self-love journey, and you can also meet her dating coach. You can dream a new dream. Make sure you check out her podcast, the Redefining Wealth Podcast. Okay, some of my takeaways, and by the way, I can't wait to share this with my single friends. And also, I have a better idea of what they're going through, especially if they're single moms. But my takeaways, a couple of them: do the self-love work. It's a mindset. Collect data, put together a desire list, and find the time by being intentional and also setting boundaries. Okay, first of all, I love what she said about shifting her mindset. She said, I can't live my life through the lens of all people act this way. So she went in with a positive mindset that she's not looking for all the people in the pool. She's just looking for her one person. I love what she said about that. And the self-love journey, I think, is so important. We continue to look for somebody that's going to fulfill us or complete us. We have to be whole on our own. I think that is so important to go on a self-love journey and make sure that you are whole and you are healed and that you're not just looking for another person to complete you. That's so important. And I really, really dig what Patrice had to say about that. And then the desire list. She said it wasn't a demand list. It was a desire list. How do you want to be treated in a relationship? She says, don't romanticize what you're experiencing. When you believe there are great people out there for you, you attract the energy you put into it. But write out your desire list. How do you want to be treated in a relationship? And she said, especially for women who are coming from long-term relationships, we have learned to self-silence and to keep the peace for a long time. But she said, this is an invitation for you to step into a new version. You get to have your desires, but you have to be honest with yourself about what that is. So good, Patrice. And then she said, collect data, have a good time. She said, it's not about getting booed up and sleeping with everybody, but look, it's about going out on dates, coffee dates. She went on hot air balloon rides, did things she'd never done before. She says, dating doesn't mean the first person that she met. She says she needs time to collect the data. So give yourself time and date and collect that data. Also, find the time by being intentional. I mean, how many of us are guilty of just having slammed calendars? She said if she didn't schedule it into her calendar, she wouldn't have made time for it. That's something that John and I are really trying to be a little bit more cognizant of as we're on this connectivity challenge. We are scheduling our time together because if we don't schedule it, we're not going to make time for it. So schedule the time and be intentional about it, and then set the boundaries. What she said about not allowing her new significant other to meet her daughter until 90 days, create those boundaries and stick with them. And going back to that mindset, this is the chance for you to step into a new version of yourself, a confident version, along with that desire list. Okay, Patrice, you're awesome. I hope it works out with your new boo. Okay, next week, the topic is getting back with your ex. So her name is Caitlin Nillis. She's known on Instagram as Honestly Caitlin. I've loved following her. A millennial mom, single mom of 2 kids, divorced. Now they are trying to reconcile and they're dating again. She gives her take on why couples end up divorced. And it's never just one thing. It's that they stop connecting. It's really interesting. She talks also about her life as a single mom and her not so great experience with dating apps and being on the dating scene. So her take's a little bit different than Patrice's take. She's also going to tell us why she is giving her ex another shot. It's a really great conversation and just underscores the importance of making time for one another and continuing to connect with your significant other. So that episode, Getting Back with Your Ex, is coming up next week as we continue to talk about it. And I'm so excited for this dating series. And make sure you've signed up for my newsletter at paulaferrisofficial.com to hear what's coming up on the series. And I can't wait to keep talking about it. Thanks, friends. I'll see you next week. I know you guys thought you were done with me, but not quite yet. I have one more thing to tell you about. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss a single beat or a single conversation. And remember, my DMs are always open. Tell me what you want to talk about.